was not in attendance. I was chairing an accreditation visiting team. But I wanted to draw your attention to this document here, which was the document that I had presented to the board in October and then to the budget committee in December. And it simply talks about class ratios K through 8. In your extreme left-hand column, next to the grade levels, you have the enrollment. And that enrollment is a projected enrollment for 2011, 2012. Then you have sections. The sections in parentheses are the sections of this year, and the sections outside of parentheses are for the 2011-12 projected year. Then you have your class ratio, and then you'll see in the extreme left-hand column, that is the policy range by the school board. Now, one of the charges the school board gave, I'm sorry, did I mess that up? Okay, right-hand column. Paul gave me this.
Well, I'm left, so.
I don't know if you're saying loser or left, but that's the policy range that the school board has established. And so one of the charges the board gave me was to make sure that when you are looking at projections for the coming year budgetarily, stay within the policy range. When I brought this to the board in October, the only one I flagged, everything else seemed to be pretty standard, was grade 5. Grade 5, with an enrollment of 63 students projected for next year, had this year 4 sections. Next year, we recommended 3 sections. Why? Because that will give you a ratio of 21 to 1. And that's within your board policy of 18 to 23. If we stayed with the 4 sections, that would be a ratio of about 15 or 16 to 1. And you can see that is well below your policy range. So that resulted in the reduction of 1 teacher at the middle school level. Fortunately, we don't have to reduce a teacher, we simply have to reassign a teacher. Why? Because we have retirees that are occurring at the elementary school. So we'll need to reassign a middle school teacher who has the proper certification, hopefully experience and interest in an elementary position to take over one of the retirees. So I know there was a question about it last time around. I didn't mean to confuse it by putting 2 numbers there, but the 3 is the number of sections in next year's 5th grade. Now I know in reading the minutes, the board asked for some projections, maybe 5-year projections. And that's something we'll compile and bring to you at your April 4th meeting. Because you'll see with those projections, and you know, be careful on the projections, they're only good for 1 year at a time. But it'll give you an idea of how enrollment is impacting the numbers of sections as it ripples through the system. And we'll bring that to you on April 4th meeting. Right. So let me ask if you have any questions about that.
No.
Okay? Right. Thank you. We'll proceed with this.
Okay. Any further business before we move to public comment? Okay. Okay, so now, again, didn't get on the agenda, but it is now on the agenda, so we will now do public comment. I just want to remind everybody, the public comment is for comments, not for question and answers. So if anybody has a comment, please state your name, your address, and we'll hear your comment. And but it's not a question and answer period.
Kevin Leandro, 98 Gunstock Hill. I'd like to remind the board that...
Could you speak up, please?
98 Gunstock Hill, Kevin Leandro. I'd like to remind the board that that citizen's petition, that was not, the language in it used the word order. I don't know how you can get advisory out of that language, but it's definitely not advisory, and the law is clear, and the law was set on March 8th. You need to follow the taxpayers. They pay the bills.
Thank you.
Lights.
Yeah.
I'll get away.
The ambiance is gone.
You want to say something? Go ahead.
Karen Thurston, Jameson Ave. I am a member of the committee that was part of the SAU that separated. I know what the intention was, what we brought forward to the town. It was accepted. We worked with building principals. We worked with town administrators. We looked and we asked the people, we aren't going to ask you to do more than we think. Can you handle this? Mike Tosi at that time was the sitting principal, felt that it was a good idea. It was nothing more than what the governor is asking the area agencies and the mental health systems to do now. They're drawing money from the same pot, but your duplication of services as far as administration. So this is what we asked when we had the warrant article came forward. I was very disappointed to hear that all of a sudden the perception of the school board was different than what our committee brought forward and was voted on and accepted. So I would ask that you do reconsider and listen to what the voters say. You do work for us. I was also very surprised to hear that you're charging $1 a page for a copy of the report when we have the technology and then the district to make it a PDF file that could be posted and accessed by anyone who wants to read it. I think that's a bit absurd as a cost. I mean, we as taxpayers paid for the paper, the copier, and the salary of the person that put it in the machine and brought it out. So I would ask that it be made a PDF file and put up so that we can, everyone who wants a copy of that report as it was signed by the school board sitting at that time, we all have access to it. Thank you.
Mrs. Thurston, could you just repeat your address for me, because I'm trying to type as quickly as I can.
Oh, 11 Jameson, Guilford.
Thank you very much.
Bruce Thurston, 11 Jameson Avenue, Guilford. I just wanted to make a statement that I think that the people who put the effort into doing things like the school board, like the other boards in town, deserve some thanks. I realize that it's a very difficult thing and the rewards are few and the challenges are many. But as a businessman, when you look at a difficult economic time, you're often confronted with people coming at you, people that you depend on for your livelihood, telling you, you need to do this for less money, you need to do a better job at it, and also we'd like you to win some prizes in the process because we need to advertise that sort of thing. And so, lo and behold, sometimes when faced with those challenges, you can actually pull it off. You analyze things that you just didn't bother to look at before because, what the heck, you know, the money was coming in, everything was fine, so we just go ahead and do it. It's important to remember that when the town gets into a position where they're in, with the vote that was given the other day, a particularly generous vote if you look at the overall vote. All the outside agencies were funded. Many of these things, the budgets went through without difficulty. But this one issue came up, and I think it's simply a request from the town to please consider what you have to do to accomplish what we want. That's all.
Joe Wernig, 3 Gary Circle in Guilford. As a parent, I want to thank all the people who presented tonight. The information was very informative. I've had people ask me in the past week, ask me, why do you live in Guilford? I had someone that's interested in moving to Guilford. And I said, well, I looked up and I found out we graduate, 80% of our graduates the past couple of years have gone on to 2 or 4 year schools. And it's been like 50 to 52% have gone on to 4-year schools. 8 out of 10, I think, is a real good average. And I'm very impressed with that. As far as all the test prep and all that stuff, I know from my experience with my kids, my son comes home and is all pumped up about NEWE scores and all that. And I could see that at the elementary school. When they get to the high school, my daughters never really came home so pumped up about the kneecaps. You know, if it was my preference, I wish we could get rid of the kneecaps and use the NEWEs, because the NEWE scores, the teachers get the results that day and can use it and share it. And my son gets it back, whereas we just got his results from the fall. And what was that I took? I said, well, that was the kneecap, the one we spent 2 hours testing. But I want to commend the school board for that. And I also, as far as the petition warrant article goes, I don't think it was worded right. I think if on the bottom of it, it had stated that the school board did not support it, I think a lot of people would have voted against it. Just like a lot of articles with the planning board, you look on there were ones I looked on and really didn't understand. And I will admit, I didn't research it, but I put my trust a lot of times in the planning board. And because the school board, it didn't, and I know you had time constraints because it was presented later, you didn't have time to put your rubber stamp on it or to say you didn't support it. And I think that was the #1 reason that it didn't pass. But I appreciate what you've done, and especially to the teachers and the curriculum people. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good.
Skip Murphy, 9 Guilford Glen Road. I am hoping that in your press release that you would acknowledge the actual vote that happened on the petition warrant article. I'm also would be very happy to see sorry, it's been a long day. I also want to see if you're going to continue your stance of whether or not you still consider it to be an advisory type stance by the petition warrant, or whether you still hold that it has force at all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Kevin?
Kevin Roy, Clifford Ave. I don't agree with Mrs. Thurston on the fact that I think everybody should read the reports from 1998, I believe it was. I have 40 pages of reports here from, including planning committee reports, minutes from the public hearing, report from the State Board of Education. And throughout the reports, if you get a chance to read it, you'll see that a lot of things have changed from then to now. Mrs. Thurston mentioned Mike Tosi
It's a living, breathing
approved it,
document.
but he also had an assistant principal at the time at the elementary school, and the plan relies on the principals of the schools and their assistants to carry out what this group came up with. Again, a lot of things have changed. If you go by this plan, we would need to hire an assistant principal at the elementary school, which we do not have now. I don't think anybody has asked Scott Isabel, who I think this planning committee assumed could take over this position of school administrator. I'm not sure he could do it. I have total confidence in Scott, having worked with him for years on the budget committee. I think that needs to be looked into. There's a lot of questions, and I certainly would like to see everybody get a chance to read the reports from back then. And ultimately, it says throughout the report that it'll be decisions concerning personnel would be made by the school board. Everything would still fall under the school board. The school board has ultimate say in how things are run. Thank you.
Dale Dormady, Wild Acres Road. Two things. First, back on the test scores. The only thing I didn't hear, and maybe it's because I came in late, following in the way my son's footsteps, he's been late to school. And that was if there is any effort to look at best practices from other schools. Because I'm assuming they run up against these same issues, whether it's student apathy or the other ones. And like a business would look at what's going on in other businesses, what are the best practices. So I may have missed that. And then as to the warrant article, I got the documents as well, which include minutes of the meeting. And not speaking to what happened in 2011, but the sense that I came away from, after reading the reports, and especially reading the meeting minutes, particularly of the public hearing at the town meeting style, where they actually voted that night to go along with this warrant article. the sense that I came away from was that the main thrust of everything was withdrawing from Laconia. And in order to do that, they had to draw up this plan. But the plan was being presented, at least the way I'm reading it, as secondary. As a matter of fact, somebody in that meeting specifically was concerned about the plan's reference to using an administrator versus a superintendent. And the chair of the committee that wrote this plan is Clark, I think his name was, Mr. Clark. Now, a quote from these meetings, he said that the committee's recommendations were illustrative only and attempted to address public concerns of costs. Nothing was cast in stone, and decisions concerning the qualifications of personnel would be made by the school board in accordance with state law. And reading the rest of the minutes, that seemed to satisfy everyone about this concern about administrative work versus superintendent. So back then, anyway, after reading this, it looks to me like that was left entirely up to the school board, and everyone in that room who voted on it heard those words kind of as a selling point immediately before voting to pass this. So that was what I took away from it. I made these available online, and I can give anyone that address, so you wouldn't have to pay the money. I paid the money.
I have all the reports at home, but I guess what I want to say is that how many of you sitting in this room were here, living in Guilford at the time that this committee met and decisions? And actually, the co-chair of the committee was our then acting town administrator, Evans Juris, who felt that to bring everything under one house and use the skills of the staff that we already had in place at the school, we saw clearly it would not be, it was more to take over the business part of the school, and of course, as the business end, they wouldn't want to be interfering with staff and policies of hiring within the school. But we felt that it was a cost saving, and to be able to even combine the fact that they had an IT person. Why have 2 IT people? Have 2 chief financial officers? Where was the way we could bring the town and actually have it work with the school? We've been here in Guilford since 1973. I've had 3 children go through this school. Proud to say that all 3 are very successful and have done well. I've been wonderful experience in this town. I worked with Sue Allen on the building committee for the elementary school. We were also told that that wouldn't work. We brought that school in under budget. It was hard work. I volunteer on a lot of the committees. So I think what we have to look at is we were in the same economic times that this committee came together and worked very hard on it and worked with staff. And we were all looking at also the same trends in fluctuation in classes, the same need to educate our kids. So that's what I think the intent was, and there was no shading or, shifting things around. And I have to trust that the people of Guilford understood, were smart enough to read and comprehend what was coming before them and what they thought would work, just like the same piece that happened at the vote. They were smart enough to read and understand what they were being asked to vote on.
And I do, need to get it back and forth, I do respect that, because you were there in the room. For those of us who weren't here at that time, I moved here in 2000. I have to rely on the public record. You're a newbie. I have to rely on the public record. And the public records about that meeting were replete throughout, referring to the plan as a recommendation.
Those were days when, 74 people showed up for a town meeting and the budget would pass on down.
It's supposed to be public comment to the board.
I'm done.
Yeah, we're done.
I don't want to cut off the conversation between the 2 of you, but this is public comment to the board.
Joe Wernick, I was here when we voted on that, and I remember voting to separate from Laconia under the assumption we were going to have another superintendent. That is what, it's pretty simple. That's what we voted on, to separate from Laconia. And that's what it was, to get a new superintendent.
Thank you. Any further comments? Going once. What? Up? Yes.
I wasn't here. I did read what Mr. Domity read as well, and, I mean, what I could take on it, you voted on it as a package. It is what it is. It's the law, it's the Constitution. I would only ask that before the board makes their press release explaining exactly what happened in '98. I know you, Mr. Weber, made a statement to, I believe it was the streamer, that in '98 people voted only to separate from Laconia. It's my understanding that you weren't here either, so I would ask that you would abstain from making those comments if you weren't here. Such as I can't make those comments because I wasn't here.
But you are. Thank you. Any further comments? Thank you very much.